Okay, so before starting off with this sessions, couple of important points remember. So as I mentioned earlier in the demonstration also that you don't have any prerequisites. You don't worry about your backgrounds at all. Everyone will be able to understand. You just need to focus a little bit on this. There's no background required for this. Don't worry about your backgrounds. And second thing, don't expect any practicals right away because there's no meaning in directly jumping into the system and doing something when you don't know why you're doing it. So first of all, you need to have a clear understanding of so many things, right? From your licensing, your landscapes, your sizing, so many things, architectures. Unless otherwise you have a good understanding of those concepts. And tomorrow, whatever you do in the system, it's not meaningful. If you do an installation, you should know why you're doing it. If you're doing a backup, you should know why you're doing it. So that understanding is so crucial. That's why these initial sessions, almost nearly 7 to 8 sessions, are so important. I never consider them as these are introduction sessions, not important and all that. It's not the case. Every single point we are going to discuss here, right from today, is very, very important. In fact, these initial sessions are so important than actually your subject if you consider. Tomorrow, if you go to any of the websites, you search for how to take a backup of HANA database, they may give you information about how to take a backup. But if you ask them about what is that licensing and all that, no one will give you that information. That's why understanding this is very, very important. And moreover, every single point we are going to discuss later on will be practically done. Don't worry. You'll be doing everything practically, every single point. So whatever I'm going to teach you in the classroom, I'm going to show you practically. When I'm showing it practically in the class, you will be able to practice when the server access is given to you. So that will be taken care. And you'll be given a documentation also. Separate link will come where we have all the documents available for you. You can download those documents and keep those documents. Just like how you can download your recorded videos, similarly you can download these documents also. Okay, so a little bit advanced stage, even I'll provide you some best practices guide also, which will be helpful for you. So in that context, to understand the implementation process in an organization, the first and foremost thing you need to know as an administrator is, suppose there is a customer, some XYZ customer want to go with SAP HANA solutions. The first and foremost thing what that customer need to do is, you need to get a license from SAP. So when a customer has decided you want to get a license from SAP or buy a license from SAP, as far as HANA is concerned, what kind of options SAP is offering to the customers? As an administrator, you need to know that. You should know what are the licensing options you have. At the same time, you should know that what are the different software components offered by SAP part of that licensing options and significance of each and every software component. Because for most of the people, you ask them what is HANA, they'll just say HANA is a database. But as an administrator, when you are speaking about HANA, you need to speak a lot more beyond that, because SAP is offering so many different software components which will have a huge impact in providing solutions to the customers. So whenever you think about implementing a solution in a customer landscape, these components plays a vital role. You should know what are those components are. It's not just about only database server. Database server is only one of them. So that's where what we are going to discuss in today and next two sessions is very, very important for you. What we are going to discuss to begin with is the SAP HANA licensing. So what are the licensing options available for you as far as HANA is concerned? And what are the software components they're giving and significance of those components I'm going to explain you. This is a big concept, so which will be there for first three sessions. One by one we'll take it. And today, if you want to buy SAP HANA database server licensing, the version offered to you is HANA 2.0, the SAP High Performance Analytics Appliance 2.0 with SPS 02. SPS stands for Support Package Stack. Support Package Stack. That itself is suggesting stack. Stack means what? Collection. Collection of support packages. So you're not speaking about one support package, you're speaking about collection of support packages. Because as I told you, when you're speaking about HANA, you're speaking about collection of components. It's not one single component, a set of components. So every component will have a support pack. And that combination only we are calling it as support package stack. Collection of support packages. So that SPS support package stack now available is to SPS 2, SPS 02. That's the latest one. So what are these support packages consisting of? Support packages are not specific to HANA. It's general concept. Any software will have support packages. What is a support package consisting of? Support packages consisting of what? The first thing, there may be some corrections. So you may have some issues, some problems, some bugs in the previous versions. So they may come up with some corrections there. So there may be some corrections and some enhancements for the existing functionality. Functionality is already available. So they might have improved that functionality. So enhancements for the existing functionalities. And third one is there may be some new functionality also, a completely new functionality. So that's also possible. So support packages may be consisting of these three things: corrections, enhancements for the existing functionality, or maybe a new functionality also. So if you look at the brief history of SAP HANA, you need to know that, because generally when people are projecting their experiences, a lot of people have seen doing mistakes. So in the profiles they are mentioning that I worked on 1.0 SPS 12 version, I worked on 2.0 version, like this, with specific support packages. So at least you should have an idea when these versions were released or support package stacks were released by SAP. So just for information, remember this. The history of SAP HANA versioning is like this. The first general availability of HANA started with HANA 1.0 SPS 03. This was way back in 2011 itself, somewhere about September, November time period. In 2011, SAP has introduced this 1.0 SPS 03. So general availability started only with this. Generally earlier to that there will be some ramp up phase. So once that is done, SAP is released to all the customers without any limitations or restrictions from this version 1.0 SPS 03. So there onwards it became a tradition for SAP. Almost every 6 months, one new support package stack they started releasing. That's the tradition they are following. That's why every year you see two support package stacks. Usually one you will get somewhere in that month of May, April, May, June, that time period, and another one will be somewhere in September, November, or December, that kind of time periods. So based on that, now you can imagine when SAP has released SPS 04, 05, 06 and all that. That's why I'm not writing all those things again. So you just consider every 6 months one new support package. So that's the tradition they're following. They're going to follow in the future also. So the last SPS in 1.0 version was SPS 12. This was introduced somewhere in 2016 itself. And then SAP came up with 2.0. 2.0 started with SPS 00. So this was almost end of November 2016. And then HANA 2.0 SPS 01. This is somewhere month of April 2017. And then the latest version is SPS 02. So this is a special case where SAP has introduced the next support pack hardly in a matter of 3 months time. Somewhere in July itself, they've introduced SPS 02. There are many reasons behind that. We have some issues in SPS 01, and that too, you know, particularly that S4 HANA, the new SAP Business Suite solution. So they want to have some special functionalities for that, which they plan to release in September. So to accommodate all those things, SAP came up with SPS 02 a lot earlier than expected. So, but even today it's SPS 02 only, HANA 2.0 SPS 02. So what you can understand from this is one thing: every 6 months they're releasing a new support package stack. Meaning of that is this is a continuous enhancement going on. Continuous enhancements, continuous improvements. So there's no end for this. They'll keep on coming up with something new or existing functionalities. They'll keep on improving. Almost every area they did this. Anyhow, it's too early for me to discuss on what enhancements they did, what improvements they did. That will be more meaningful for you tomorrow when we discuss about specific concepts. Like example, and tomorrow when you start working on the installations, I'll explain you how it used to be earlier, what kind of changes they did, what new options they provided. Similarly, when you're learning backups, similarly in the backups where they started, what enhancements they provided in the new versions. So while you are practicing, you'll be having 1.0 version as well as 2.0 version. We have 2.0 SPS2 available with us. At the same time, I'll give you 1.0 also, so that at least you can understand, okay, the older version it used to be like this, now in the new versions you have. And apart from that, you'll also learn how to upgrade from that older versions to new versions. That also you'll be able to practice. That's why I'll be providing you both 1.0 version as well as the 2.0 versions also. You'll be able to practice all of them. Now, irrespective of this, when a customer wants to buy a license, remember basically SAP is offering mainly two editions of HANA. I'm not speaking about versions now, I'm speaking about editions as far as licensing is concerned. One is SAP HANA platform version, platform edition. And the second one is SAP HANA Enterprise Edition. These are the only two editions you have as far as HANA license is concerned, mainly two editions. See, at the beginning, somewhere till SPS 03 and 04 of 1.0, we used to have one more edition. We used to call it as HANA Enterprise Extended Edition. There's no more available. Right from SPS 05, they stopped it. Anyhow, that discussion will come to that later on. I'm going to explain you what they used to provide in that Enterprise Extended Edition. That's way back in 2012 itself. SAP stopped giving it in 2012 for some specific reasons. So these are the two editions of SAP HANA available for you: Platform Edition, Enterprise Edition. So first, let us start our discussion on this Platform Edition. Platform Edition is the most basic edition of HANA. When I say the most basic edition of HANA, meaning of that is, in this Platform Edition only, you have all the core software components. The core software components. What do you mean by core software components? Core software components are nothing but the software components which are mandatory, compulsory, without which there's no HANA implementation at all. So those core components are provided in this Platform Edition. So meaning of that is, any customer anywhere in the world has to go with the Platform Edition. And going with Enterprise Edition is an optional thing for them. If they were interested, they can go with Enterprise Edition, which is basically an extension of the Platform Edition. So we'll come to that Enterprise Edition later on in our discussion, because you need to understand Platform Edition components first of all. So let us look at these Platform Edition components. What are the software components offered by SAP in the Platform Edition? The first and foremost, the most important of all the components is your HANA database server. So in this Platform Edition only, SAP is providing you the database server component. We know that SAP HANA is a database, in-memory database, and the database server software will provide you part of this Platform Edition. Okay, now SAP is offering you that database server software to you in this Platform Edition. Now, so once SAP is providing this software to you, now you want to install and run HANA database server in your company. There are two important prerequisites, remember. HANA database server, if you want to run in your company, that first and foremost thing you need is, you need a certified hardware, which we call it as an appliance, because SAP made it mandatory for all the customers to run HANA only on the certified hardware. No choice there, compulsory. It's mandatory to run HANA only on certified hardware. And that certified hardware is what we call it as appliance. So what this customer needs to do is, he need to procure this appliance from the certified vendors. The huge list of vendors we have, it's a big list. So you can procure from any of these vendors like IBM, Dell, HP, Cisco, Fujitsu, Hitachi, NEC, Silicon Graphics, a lot of vendors like this. So there are more than 1330 models available for you. You can choose from that list. It's a big list. If you see at the beginning, starting of SAP HANA in 2011, hardly we used to have 15-20 models. But today we have more than 1330 models. Every week you can see another 10 models are getting added there. So that's what the success of SAP HANA is. So they provide you hardware configurations ranging from very small configurations like 64 GB RAM going up to hundreds of TBs. It's scalable. So generally, this is another most important thing what always customers will look for. Any customer will look for having a software which is scalable, hardware which is scalable. So that flexibility anyhow they have here. HANA database server software is scalable, and your hardware is also scalable. That scalability is there. So you'll be learning more about that later on, how you can perform scale up, scale out, all these options given by SAP. So they provide from very small configurations to very high configurations. But think about this. Think as an individual. Suppose you want to buy a PC. What do? You go to the shop. You can't simply ask the shop guy to give you a PC. So whenever you go to a shop, you need to give him the details about what kind of configuration you're looking for. Similarly, when you want to procure an appliance from these certified vendors, you need to identify your hardware requirements first of all. So identify the hardware requirements of the customer. Like you want to buy a PC, like you should know, okay, what is the purpose of that, for which purpose you are going to use. Based on that purpose, okay, this is a configuration suitable. And you should have a proper plan also. Suppose assume that today you want to buy a laptop for personal usage. There's nothing much you are going to do. So that's why you want to buy a laptop with 4 GB RAM. But you have some plans in the future. Maybe after 1 year, you want to learn SAP ERP. So you want to install SAP ERP on that laptop after 1 year. So you know that SAP ERP you want to install, say minimum 8 GB RAM is required. But you should plan for it. Today, you may be buying a laptop with 4 GB RAM, but you should buy a laptop which is compatible to upgrade to 8 GB RAM tomorrow, as and when needed. That's what I'm speaking about scalabilities. That you need to plan properly. Otherwise, tomorrow when you try to upgrade, if it's not compatible, you know the compatibilities. It's not like every computer can run with 8 GB RAM, right? So it depends on your motherboard, it depends on the processor. So you need to plan it properly so that cost factor comes into picture. Because ultimately, for any customer you take in the world, what they look at is when you're providing solutions or offering solutions to the customers, they'll think about only two factors. They'll speak about something called TCO, the total cost of ownership, and there is something called ROI, the return on investment. So you have to show TCO as low as possible. You have to show ROI as high as possible. Only then the customers will be interested. So that's also important in the planning. So they have to identify the hardware in such a way so that is suitable for their present requirements, and in the future, if situation demands, they have to have that scalability options. So this process of identifying the hardware requirements is not a small task. It's not as simple as identifying a PC. No, in the companies you have to do it carefully because your performance depends on this. So it's a very very important activity. So this has to be done by you as an administrator. You know this process of identifying that hardware requirements, that's what we call it as sizing. So you have to do sizing and you have to identify the hardware requirements of this customer, and then you can go to the hardware directory list given by SAP and you can choose the right kind of hardware. So definitely pricing is also another big factor they need to consider, apart from identifying the right configuration for this customer. Anyhow, as it's an important activity, sizing is a very important activity. So part of your training, you're going to have 2 dedicated sessions exclusively for sizing. We are going to have a detailed discussion on the sizing after a few sessions. After 5-6 sessions, you'll be having a topic called sizing. I'm going to explain you the complete procedures you need to follow, what kind of approaches you'll follow for sizing, and how to do it, how to identify the hardware requirements of a customer. So you do the sizing, identify the hardware, and choose the right kind of vendor, and procure the appliance from that vendor. And remember this, procuring an appliance from a vendor is a task which will take some time. Don't expect this to happen immediately, instantly. Usually this is a process which will take 4 weeks. So you need to plan it properly. A proper planning is so important. Otherwise, you know, your project will be delayed. So you won't be able to reach your timelines. So that's why, excuse me, the plan is very, very important. So make it sure that you procure the appliances at the right time to start your implementations. So that's the first thing. So once you identify your hardware and procure the appliance from a vendor, any of these vendors listed out there, then the next thing is, now it's like you bought a new PC. Now you have a new PC with you. Now what you want to do? Say you want to install MS Office on that. So you want to install any kind of software there. First and foremost thing you need to do on that particular PC is you need to install an operating system. Now without operating system, you cannot think about installing any software. So similarly, here on these appliances, you need to install an operating system. Then only you'll be able to install your database server. So coming to HANA database server installation, remember that SAP is supporting only one operating system. You can install HANA database server only on Linux. Only on Linux. No other operating systems are supported. Remember this. Don't generalize saying that HANA runs on Linux. Be specific. Now you are more of a technical guy. You're an administrator. You should speak in the terms of components. Don't generalize saying HANA. You better say HANA database server runs only on Linux. Because there are other components of HANA. It's not just about database server. So HANA database server runs on Linux operating system. Initially, SAP supported only SUSE Linux, SUSE Linux Enterprise Server, and then later on from SPS 9, 1.0 SPS 9 onwards, they started supporting even Red Hat Enterprise Linux also. So either SUSE or Red Hat now. Okay, so people will have a doubt why only Linux. Yes, SAP is having their own reasons. They've chosen this for some selected reasons. These are more lightweight operating systems, more secured ones, easy to maintain, and open sources. A lot of advantages we have with these operating systems. That's why they preferred using this Linux. Initially only SUSE Linux, but later on, many of the customers they have already this Red Hat they are using there, so they started supporting Red Hat also. And another thing, people will have a doubt like which version of the Linux. That you don't worry. Depending on the version of your database, the version of Linux will be. It's not a fixed one. You can't follow the same always. Like suppose if I want to run HANA 1.0 SPS 12, I need to have, if it is SUSE Linux, SLES 11.4. If I want to install 2.0 SPS 00, it doesn't run on 11.4. Compulsory I need to have 12.2. So minimum required like that. So they'll give you clearly, if you go to something called PAM, Product Availability Matrix, they'll clearly give you which version of that operating system is suitable. So that version you need to install, and then you'll be able to install your HANA database server, which doesn't take much time. Hardly it's a matter of 15 minutes activity installing the database server. So which you'll be learning practically, and you'll also do it practically later. So now the main component is ready. You have your appliance, Linux is installed, database server is installed. Now in your company, there is a HANA database server running. Fine, database server is ready now. Now, once your database server is running in a company, there are many people who want to work with this database server. When I say many people, so they can be administrators, they can be technical people like modeling consultants, they may be developers. So there are many people who want to work with this database server. So they want to perform different activities depending on their roles and responsibilities. You can't expect all these people working on the server directly. In fact, we don't allow them to work on the servers directly. So it's obvious that all these people will be working from client workstations, including administrators. I don't allow every administrator to work on the server directly. I don't allow them to work on that Linux machine directly, except maybe a super admin. So when you people want to work from a client workstation, maybe a administrator, maybe a modeling consultant, maybe a development consultant, whoever it is. So when they want to work from a client workstation, what basically they need is they need an interface. They need an interface to perform their activities. So generally, when you are speaking about interfaces, basically there are two types of interfaces we use. One is CLIs, command line interfaces, where we just enter some commands, type commands. You go to DOS prompt and you type some commands like that. Or otherwise, another option, you have graphical user interfaces. Using the graphical screens, you perform your activities. Anyhow, you feel more comfortable working with graphical interfaces. So what SAP has done is, when these people want to perform different activities from the client workstation, SAP is providing a graphical tool for you. And that graphical tool SAP is offering to you is HANA Studio. It's a simple graphical tool which you can install in the client workstation. And using this graphical tool HANA Studio, one single tool, you'll be able to perform multiple activities. So what are those multiple activities you can perform? Using this Studio tool, you can perform admin activities. Admin activities means you can perform anything like backup, recoveries, security maintenance, like user creation, role creation, monitoring. All these things you can do from here. And not only administration, modeling consultants, they can perform the data modeling. They can build data models, which they can use for analysis. And the development consultants, even they can perform the development activities, like they can develop some applications if needed, like mobile applications, web applications they can develop using the same tool. So one single tool, you're able to perform multiple activities. So that's the advantage we have with the HANA Studio. So this HANA Studio, you're going to install it in the client workstations. So when you say you want to install HANA Studio in the client workstations, now the question here is, what is that operating system you can expect on the client workstations? Client workstations, you can't expect Linux operating system. Client workstations, mostly it will be Windows. So that's why I remember, when it comes to HANA Studio, when that software is given to you, HANA Studio software, SAP is providing this HANA Studio software for different operating systems. They're providing HANA Studio for Windows. You have 32-bit, 64-bit available. You have HANA Studio available for Linux, and HANA Studio is available for Mac OS also. So that's where you should not get confused. If you see, this is my Windows machine. I have HANA Studio here. This is my HANA Studio. So don't get confused. So Studio is running on Windows, but whereas my database is running on Linux operating system only. You can see that this database is running on SUSE Linux. 12.3 I'm using there. So no confusions there. That's why I told you, don't generalize saying that HANA runs on Windows, HANA runs on Linux. No. HANA database server runs only on Linux. Whereas when it comes to Studio, Studio you can install on Windows, Linux or Mac OS. It's a simple graphical tool, a small tool. And there is an important story behind this HANA Studio tool. I'll come to that. I'll explain you that. a useful story behind this HANA Studio. We'll come back to that. Okay, now you have database server installed on the uh, standard appliance on the Linux machine, and now you have HANA Studio installed, say example on this Windows machine. Now, whenever these people, all these technical people want to perform any activity, having Studio, okay, Studio is there, but when they want to do administration, modeling, development, anything, first of all, they need to connect to the server. They need to connect to the database server. Without connection to the database server, nothing can be done. So when you're speaking about connecting to the database server, database connectivity, you might have done this database connectivity. It's like not only HANA, any database you take, Oracle, SQL Server, DB2, any database connectivity you want to do, you need some drivers. You might have heard about some drivers like ODBC drivers, JDBC drivers, ODBO. So basically we need database connectivity drivers. HANA is nothing different. HANA is also database. So obviously we need drivers to connect to the HANA database. So what SAP has done is SAP is provided all the drivers. Instead of giving drivers separately, all the drivers, set of all the drivers combining together, they provided a small software called HANA Client. Very simple software. So in this HANA Client software, you'll find all the drivers required to communicate with your HANA database. So drivers like your JDBC, your ODBC, all these drivers are provided. Without these drivers, no way you can connect to the database. So in the client workstation, you installed HANA Studio, but not only HANA Studio, you also installed HANA Client. Observe here, I'm just showing examples. This all you'll be learning later on. If you look at these drivers, general drivers, Oracle, all those drivers you have there, but you also find something called HANA Database ODBC driver. In fact, that is allowing you to connect to your database. Without the driver, there is no way you can connect to the database. So the drivers are so important for you. So that HANA Client is a small software consisting of all the drivers required to communicate with your HANA database. So you'll install HANA Client in your workstation along with the Studio, and then from the Studio, like this, you establish a connection to the HANA database. Once you connect to the HANA database, perform your different activities. Whatever it is, maybe monitoring, maybe backup, maybe recovery, securities, anything you can take care of. And modeling consultant, they can perform data modeling and all that. See how simple is this working environment to understand. This is so important for you to, first of all, visualize all these things, how the system setups will be done in the companies. In the coming sessions, you are going to learn something about system landscapes. So you need to have a good understanding of the landscapes. You need to understand, first of all, the components. If you know the components, you will understand the landscapes more easily. Even though your job is only a database administrator, HANA database administrator, knowing about the landscape will help you out to identify the problems and troubleshoot the problems more effectively. Because you should know, okay, in this system setup, if I have this problem might have maybe initiated from some other place, from some other application. We don't know that. So if you know the complete system setup, you'll have a good overall understanding of that. It becomes easy for you to work in that environment. So that always you need to look at. It's not just blindly working there. Get understanding of your system setups. So this will be whatever we are discussing now. All this will be helpful for you to understand those system setups later on. So these are the main things for you. A lot more components we are going to discuss in tomorrow and after tomorrow session also. We'll come to that later on. And there are some browser-based utilities also SAP is providing to you. I can access those browser-based tools. Like example, there is something called HANA Cockpit. HANA Cockpit, if I want access in the client workstation, I don't need to install anything. Just I'll open a browser, I'll enter a URL, I can start accessing the HANA Cockpit. It's such a simple thing. I don't need to install anything. But these are the major things for you. The HANA Database Server, HANA Studio, HANA Client, which we can also call them as core software components, without which there's no HANA implementation at all. Okay, so now coming back to that HANA Studio, as I told you, there is a brief story behind that. Try to understand, this is really helpful for you for an administrator. Actually, SAP did not develop this HANA Studio from the scratch. Observe what happens now. I'm just opening HANA Studio. Actually, I'm opening HANA Studio, but what is this title it's giving here? Observe, it's saying Eclipse Launcher. So this is what is an important point which you need to understand as an administrator. So the point what you need to know here is, this HANA Studio is not developed by SAP from the scratch. What they did is, they taken a ready-made existing platform called Eclipse. You might have heard about Eclipse, a popular one. It's a Java IDE tool. Most of the people might have heard about this. It's open source. You know, eclipse.org, there is a website, you can go and check there. So that is a Java IDE tool. What they did, they've taken that Java IDE tool and they simply added some add-on, additional software on top of that Eclipse, and that they released it as HANA Studio. That's why when I'm opening this HANA Studio, showing that Eclipse launcher there. So in simple terminology, technically speaking, HANA Studio is nothing but Eclipse with an add-on, additional software. Why I'm saying this is important for you to understand is, see, this is not first time SAP is using Eclipse. SAP started using Eclipse way back. If you know a brief history about SAP, SAP initially relied completely on ABAP programming for their application development. You know, SAP's own programming language called ABAP, Advanced Business Application Programming. So they completely relied on ABAP programming for their application development initially. But you know, early 2000, late 90s, early 2000, when there is a huge demand for you know, mobile-based applications and web-based applications, so they found a lot of difficulties and limitations in ABAP programming. So after realizing that, SAP started using Java for their application development. They started doing it. So that's the reason why in 2004 SAP came up with the NetWeaver platform. So where they have some applications developed using ABAP and some of the application developed using Java. So once SAP started developing their applications using Java, they want to have a proper IDE tool. You know, Java is open source, anyone can use. What SAP thought, why can't we use an open source IDE tool? So at that time itself, Eclipse was popular. They started using Eclipse. So in 2004, when SAP came up with NetWeaver first time, they've introduced a tool called NetWeaver Developer Studio, NWDS. That MWDS was based on Eclipse only. What they did, they taken Eclipse and they added some software, and they given some provisions to develop that enterprise portal applications, knowledge management, mobile infrastructure applications, and all that. So there's nothing new for them. They started using Eclipse way back. So what they did now also they're taken Eclipse and they added some software, and they're given it as a HANA Studio, where they're allowing you to perform HANA administration, HANA modeling, HANA development, all these things. So why is it so important for you to know as an administrator is, suppose tomorrow you started working in a company. So what that customer has asked you is, hey, our ABAP developers want to do ABAP development in Eclipse. Or they may say that I want to do ABAP development from HANA Studio. And they'll ask you to set up the working environment. What you are going to do? So generally, ABAP developers, what they do, ABAP developers, if they want to do any ABAP developments, they go to SAP GUI like this. They log into their SAP application, and after logging into SAP application, they use something called ABAP Development Workbench, and they do the developments from there. That's a old concept. But now, suppose the customer is opting for S4 HANA implementation. You know, S4 HANA, there's a new ERP, Business Suite solution, 4th generation one, but only with HANA database. Suppose there is an ABAP consultant who has to work for this S4 HANA implementation. Understand this. This ABAP consultant worked earlier for ERP implementation, SAP ERP. He worked for that implementation. But earlier, when he is working as an ABAP consultant, he never knows what is the underlying databases. That ERP application may be running with Oracle or SQL Server or DB2. The way he is writing ABAP programming is same because that's completely independent of database. But now the same ERP, when it's implemented with HANA database, now the programming code is not changed, but some new techniques SAP has introduced. What SAP has done, they optimized ABAP programming for HANA database. Part of that optimization techniques, what he has to do is this ABAP developer need to write some programming code at the database level as well as some programming code at the application level. Application level programming code, he can go to ABAP development workbench and he can do it. But database level programming, you need to use HANA Studio and you need to do it. So here you need to use two different development environments. Obviously, in this process, he'll be wasting a lot of time because you need to use two different tools and perform activities. Now that's why what SAP has done is to simplify this working environment. In Eclipse itself, they started providing the ABAP development facilities also in Eclipse itself, so that this ABAP developer doesn't need to use two different working environments. So staying in Eclipse, he can write the ABAP program. He can also write the database level programming, that's called SQL scripting. Observe here on the right top corner, here we have BW modelings and ABAP also is there here. So what is that ABAP? How do you get that ABAP option? It's basically Eclipse. As I told you, HANA Studio itself is an add-on. So you get some more additional software and install it, you'll get ABAP development facility. You'll get one more additional software called BW modeling, install, you'll get BW modeling. So meaning of that is all the activities you can perform based on Eclipse only. As and when situation demands, just get the additional software and install it. Don't worry how they do it. I'll show you. Practically we'll be doing it. But understand the concept behind this. So the future of SAP development is totally Eclipse, Eclipse-based development environment, what we call it as. So as an administrator, the basic point you need to understand there is, you need to understand that ABAP developments, if you want to perform in Eclipse, you need to know that that's just a simple add-on. You just get additional software, install it. So that very simple point, if you understand, that's it. You're done. You don't need to worry anything. You just download the ABAP development tools given by SAP. Otherwise, online also directly you can update your software. There is a simple URL portal given. You can just go there and download and install it. Over. The basic logic you need to know there. So that you'll be able to understand only when you know that the basic platform you have here is Eclipse. So that's a small story behind this. It's really important for you. So never get confused with these things. These are all very, very basic bones. Because people are confused. Like suddenly, if they say ABAP development, confused what to install, where to install, and all that. It's nothing. It's actually just a matter of 5 minutes task for an administrator if they know that basic logic. So SAP is projecting this a lot. The future is we don't use all these complicated working environments. We use only Eclipse environment to perform all the activities, which includes your HANA related activities like development, modeling, administration. BW modeling you can do here. ABAP developments you can do here. Process integration designs you can do from here. All these facilities are providing you with simple add-on additional softwares. So they'll give you that facility for you to install whatever the additional software is needed from here. The basic simple URL will be given to you. You just go to that URL, they'll give the entire list to you. That is tools.hana.ondemand.com. If you go there, the entire list comes. You can select and install it. Over. See how simple is that? Provided you know that basic logic behind that. That's why I told you. These are all, even though look so simple, basic points, but they are very, very crucial for you for your working environment. People won't focus on these things. There's no point in directly jumping and starting installations on first day itself when you don't know all these points. But tomorrow when you install, you know, okay, I'm installing database server will be there. I'm installing studio and the client. There are some people, even today there are some people who claims that my database server, my HANA database server is running on Windows. Because their assumption is they see studio running on Windows and they'll see already database server connected there. Their assumption is my database is running on Windows. There are kind of people like that. That's why that clear separations we need to have. A clear understanding of each and every software component is very, very important. That's why we are discussing these things. And there are many optional software components given by SAP. I'll explain you those components and significance of those components. The customers, they may use or may not use, don't worry. But we should know. That will be really helpful for you. Because see, you can't think about working always as a low-level technical guy. At some point, you need to come to a stage where you can start suggesting the customers about some solutions. And that you'll gain knowledge only when you start exploring all other options you have, additional components given by SAP. Irrespective of whether they use it or not, doesn't matter. One customer may use or one customer may not use. That's why I told you it's a big concept which we are going to discuss for the next two sessions also.